What happens when a former royal steps into the arena with America's most outspoken talk show host, and the conversation takes a turn no one saw coming? Today, we're breaking down the moment that had daytime TV buzzing when Meghan Markle appeared on The View, and things went from cordial to catastrophic in minutes. Make sure you're subscribed and drop a comment, because this one will have you rethinking everything you thought you knew about daytime television. The studio lights blazed as Meghan Markle walked onto The View set, her trademark smile flashing as she waved to the crowd. The applause was loud, almost too loud, but beneath it, you could feel a crackle of tension. Whoopi Goldberg, the veteran host who's weathered more than her share of controversy, leaned back in her chair with that familiar, "I've seen it all" expression. "Welcome to The View, Meghan," Whoopi began, her voice warm but grounded. "Thank you so much for having me, Whoopi. I've always admired your work," Meghan replied, settling into her seat with polished ease. Joy Behar jumped in, all enthusiasm. "So Meghan, let's talk about these new ventures. You've got a podcast, Netflix projects, how are you balancing it all?" Meghan's eyes lit up. "Well, Joy, it's about finding your authentic voice and using your platform to make a difference. Harry and I have been fortunate to tell stories that matter, shining light on issues that deserve attention." Sarah Haynes nodded. "That's wonderful. And speaking of making a difference, you've been vocal about social justice. How important is it to use your celebrity for causes you believe in?" "It's everything," Meghan said, her voice gaining passion. "When you have a platform, you have a responsibility. Even before I married into the royal family, I was advocating for women's rights and equality." That's when Whoopi's expression shifted. Subtly, but noticeably to anyone who knew her. "Let's talk about that royal family experience," she said. "You've made some serious allegations about racism within the institution. That's no small charge." The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Meghan's smile flickered before she steadied herself. "I think it's important to distinguish between the institution and individual family members. I've never said the entire family is racist." "But," Whoopi pressed, "you did say there were concerns about your son's skin color. That's not something you casually mention in an interview with Oprah, unless you're making a point about racism." "I shared my truth," Meghan replied, a defensive edge creeping in. "People need to understand the reality of what we experienced." Sunny Hostin tried to steer the conversation. "Meghan, many have been inspired by your courage. What would you say to critics who think you should have handled it differently?" But Whoopi wasn't done. "See, here's what I don't get. You knew what you were walking into when you married into the royal family. This isn't some new group. It's been around for over 1,000 years. They have their ways, their traditions, their protocols." Meghan's jaw tightened. "Whoopi, that's a simplistic way to look at it. Just because something's been done for centuries doesn't make it right." "I'm not saying it's right or wrong," Whoopi shot back. "I'm saying it's what it is. And if you marry into it, you have to understand what you're signing up for." The audience was silent now, sensing the shift. Meghan leaned forward, her composure slipping. "So, you're saying I should have just accepted racism because it's tradition?" "I'm saying you should have done your homework," Whoopi replied instantly. "This isn't a fairy tale, Meghan. This is real life, with real consequences." Alyssa Farah Griffin tried to jump in. "I think what Whoopi might be getting at is..." "No, let her finish." Meghan cut in, her voice rising just enough to slice through the air. "I want to hear exactly what Whoopi thinks I should have done differently." Whoopi's eyes narrowed. "You want to know what I think? I think you went in with certain expectations, and when reality didn't match them, you lit a match and burned it all down, instead of working inside the system to create change." The studio went still. You could hear the hum of the lights overhead. Meghan's composure, carefully crafted for the cameras, was beginning to fray, and everyone could see it. She gripped the arms of her chair, locked on Whoopi. "Burn it all down." "That's really what you think I did? Well, didn't you?" Whoopi's tone didn't waver. "You gave one of the most watched interviews in TV history, airing every grievance you had with the royal family. If that's not burning bridges, I don't know what is." "I told my truth," Meghan said sharply. "I shared what happened to me, what I lived through. Are you saying you couldn't have stayed silent?" "I'm saying," Whoopi fired back, "there are ways to handle family business that don't involve going global with it. You could have worked it out privately. You could have given it more time." Joy leaned forward. "Maybe we should?" "No, Joy." Meghan cut her off, eyes locked on Whoopi. "Let's address this." "Whoopi, you're talking about more time. How much time should someone give to an institution that's hurting them? How long should I have stayed quiet while my mental health collapsed?" Whoopi leaned in, matching her intensity. "Mental health is serious, and I'm not dismissing it. But you're a grown woman who made grown decisions. You chose to marry into this family knowing what it meant." "Did I, though?" Meghan's voice climbed, her control slipping. "Because no one told me I'd be picked apart for everything, from how I held my baby bump to what I ate for breakfast. That's what happens when you marry a prince," Whoopi said flatly. "It comes with the territory. And racism comes with the territory, too. Is that what you're telling me?" Meghan shot back. The other hosts exchanged uneasy glances. Sarah tried to mediate. "Maybe you're talking past each other." "No, Sarah." Whoopi cut in. "We're talking directly. Meghan, I've been in this business for decades. I've faced racism. I've dealt with discrimination. But I've also learned sometimes you work within the system to change it, not run from it." Meghan's eyes flared. "Run away? You think I ran away? You left the royal family. You left the UK, you came to America. Then you went on Oprah to tell your side. If that's not running away, what is?" "I call it protecting my family," Meghan said, her voice trembling but fierce. "Choosing my mental health over a system that was breaking me down piece by piece." Whoopi didn't let up. "You say you protected your family. But what about Harry's family? What about the relationships that were damaged? His father, his brother?" Meghan was shaking now. "Are you seriously suggesting I should have put their comfort over my survival?" "I'm saying actions have consequences," Whoopi replied, cold as glass. "And those consequences don't just land on you." Meghan suddenly stood, her chair scraping across the floor. "I thought coming here would be different. I thought I'd be talking to women who understood what it's like to be a woman of color in spaces where you're not wanted." "Oh, don't you dare," Whoopi said, rising too. "Don't make this about race when it's about accountability. Everything about my experience has been about race." Meghan's voice echoed through the studio. "From the moment I started dating Harry, everything I did was judged through that lens. And you think that gives you a free pass to say whatever you want about whoever you want?" Whoopi shot back, the challenge hanging in the air. The audience sat frozen, the silence so thick it felt physical. This wasn't just another tense exchange. This was an unprecedented collision happening live. The other hosts looked like they were trying to sink into their chairs and vanish. "I don't need a free pass to tell the truth," Meghan said, her voice now low, sharp, and deliberate. "And I sure don't need permission from you, or anyone, to share my experiences. But you do need to take responsibility for the impact of your words." Whoopi shot back. "You can't drop bombs on international television and then act surprised when there's fallout." "Fallout?" Meghan gave a bitter laugh. "You want to talk about fallout? Let's talk about the fallout I lived every single day I was part of that family. The suicidal thoughts, the complete absence of support, the isolation. I'm sorry you went through that." Whoopi said, her tone softening for a moment. But that doesn't excuse how you handled it afterward. Excuse? Meghan's voice was incredulous. I don't need to excuse anything. I survived. I got out. I protected my children. And if that bothers you, or anyone else, that's not my problem. Whoopi's expression hardened. And there it is. That attitude right there is exactly what I'm talking about. What attitude? Meghan demanded, her hands trembling with contained fury. The attitude of someone who refuses to be silenced. Whoopi said evenly. The attitude of someone who chose herself over an institution that was destroying her, but also the attitude of someone who thinks she's above accountability. You think I want to be the victim in every story? Meghan's cheeks flushed red. You have no idea what you're talking about. You weren't there. You didn't live it. You're right, I wasn't, Whoopi acknowledged. But I've been watching from the outside. And I see someone who had every opportunity in the world and threw it away when things got hard. Threw it away. Meghan's voice cracked. I was suicidal, Whoopi. I was thinking about ending my life. But sure, let's call that throwing opportunities away. The studio dropped into an eerie stillness. Even Whoopi seemed caught off guard for half a second before regaining her edge. Mental health struggles are real and serious, she said, her tone measured. But using them as a shield against any criticism, that's not fair either. A shield. Meghan stepped closer, her voice dropping into a dangerous whisper. You think sharing the darkest moments of my life is using them as a shield? I think you've weaponized your pain, Whoopi replied without flinching. And that's not the same thing as healing from it. The other hosts looked stricken. Joy opened her mouth, then closed it again. Sarah had her head in her hands. Sunny stared like she was watching a slow motion car crash. Weaponized my pain, Meghan repeated, her voice trembling with rage. Is that what you call speaking truth to power? Is that what you call standing up for yourself? I call it convenient, Whoopi said coldly. It's convenient to play the victim when people start asking hard questions about your choices. My choices? Meghan was vibrating now, her anger radiating off her in waves. Let me tell you about my choices, Whoopi. I chose to marry someone. The audience sat frozen, every breath caught in the heavy, unbroken silence. Meghan's voice, steady but burning, cut through it. I loved despite knowing it would be difficult. I served that institution with dignity, even while I was treated as an outsider from day one. I stayed silent for months, while the press shredded my reputation. And when I finally spoke, when I finally told my truth, you call that weaponizing my pain? Selective storytelling, Whoopi shot back without missing a beat. Because there are always two sides to a story. We've only been hearing yours. Because it's my story to tell. Meghan's voice cracked, fury surging. It's my life, my trauma. I don't owe anyone a balanced perspective on my own suffering. But you do owe people honesty. Whoopi countered, her gaze locked on Meghan's. And I'm not convinced we're getting the whole truth. That was the breaking point. Meghan's expression drained of color, then flushed with heat. You're calling me a liar? I'm saying I have questions? Whoopi said evenly. Meghan laughed bitterly, sharp, metallic. Questions. About whether racism exists. About whether I was treated unfairly. About whether I was pushed to the breaking point. I have questions about your version of events, Whoopi replied, unshaken. Meghan stared at her for a long, loaded moment. Then, in a move that electrified the room, she began unclipping her microphone. What are you doing? Joy blurted. I'm done, Meghan said simply, placing the mic on the table with surgical precision. Running away again. Whoopi's voice followed her like a shadow. Meghan froze, her back half turned. Slowly, she faced the table again, her words now honed to an icy blade. You're right, Whoopi. I am done. Done explaining myself to people who decided who I was before they ever knew me. Done justifying my choices to people who didn't live it, didn't feel it, didn't survive it. I came here for a conversation, not an interrogation, and I will not stand trial for the crime of protecting my family. Sarah opened her mouth, but Meghan silenced her with a raised hand. No. This is exactly what I'm talking about. The belief that my pain needs permission to be real. You want to question my truth? Go ahead. You want to minimize my experiences? Be my guest. But I don't have to sit here and swallow it. Then you're leaving, Whoopi said flatly. Just like you left the royal family. Just like you left acting. Whenever it gets hard. Meghan reached the edge of the set, her figure framed by the stage lights. She didn't turn around. No, Whoopi, she said, her voice low and final. I'm choosing myself again, and I'm done apologizing for it. With that, she walked out, her heels striking the studio floor like a gavel closing a case. The panel sat stunned. The audience didn't dare move. Whoopi exhaled slowly. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I guess that's a wrap. The cameras kept rolling, catching every astonished face, every unspoken thought. It was the kind of television moment that would be replayed, debated, and dissected for years to come.